This episode is brought to you by me, Medium S.K. Cawthron. Grief can make you feel alone, but love never really ends, it just changes form. My intuitive sessions offer a safe space to reconnect with your spark and with the ones you love. Go to skcawthron.com for a session. That's skcothren.com. I'll meet you there. Today I am interviewing Kathleen Marden for Bright Pink Soul, and I am so excited you're here, Kathleen. Welcome to Bright Pink Soul.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Well, I would like to talk about how I found you. I started watching various Ancient Alien episodes and, of course, George Norrie, listening to George Norrie on AM, Coast to Coast AM, and you kept popping up, and I just loved your presentations, the way you're so focused but also so personal. And so I just started noticing you more and more, and I thought, I'm going to read some of her books. And so I started with the Alien Abduction Files, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. And you have written how many books? Six?
Well, 6, but more. I mean, one person has a count of 19 books, but I've written chapters in other people's books, and some of my books have been published in hardcover under different titles as well. So, and I have second editions of a couple of my books as well.
Well, congratulations also on your recent 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award from the International UFO Congress.
Oh, thank you so much. That was such an honor. I was thrilled to receive it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how many, it was a big conference, obviously, and what countries were involved in that conference? Do you know?
Well, they had conferences every year. So they would have top speakers from around the world who would come. So sometimes from South America, sometimes from Europe, sometimes from Africa, Australia. This is a very old conference. It goes back in history. And over many, many years, they had many international speakers.
Wow. Well, I know you've been speaking on UFO phenomena and experiencer phenomena for years. And so I'm really interested in your research, but I kind of want to go back and have you kind of recap your experience with your family, Betty and Barney Hill, and their experience with being abducted that's so famous from 1961, right?
That's correct.
1961?
Yes.
So if you wouldn't mind kind of just recapping that experience in New Hampshire and how you were associated with it, because you were 13 at the time, right?
I was 13 years old when Betty and Barney had their experience. And about a month before they went on their vacation trip, I was showing Betty and Barney photographs of my summer trip with a different aunt and uncle, Betty's sister, June, and her husband and my cousin. And we had a wonderful summer trip to Niagara Falls. And Buddy and Barney were there and looking at the photographs, and I was telling them all about my trip and how much I enjoyed it. And Barney asked Betty if she would like to take a trip to Niagara Falls sometime. And she said that she would. So he in September, on the spur of the moment, really, asked for a few days off so that he could take her to Niagara Falls. This was a surprise. She was a social worker for the state of New Hampshire, working in child welfare and adoption. And Barney decided to just take her on this trip. So they went. They left on September 17, 1961. Early in the morning, Barney rose at about 4 o'clock or 4:30 in the morning to leave. And they drove over to Niagara Falls, and they crossed over into the beautiful Canadian side of the falls. That's the side that most people visit because it's so picturesque, and they have colored lights on the falls and plenty of hotels, that sort of thing. So they crossed over, they spent the night there, and the following day they just drove on. And I'm not going to get into the entire thing. You can read it in my book, Captured: The Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. But the next night they spent west of Montreal, and then they spent the day in Montreal, and were going to go back in the evening, but and stay at the outskirts of Montreal in a motel because they had a dog and not a lot of money. The spur of the moment trip meant that they had to pull their cash together and take a picnic cooler and a little stove and that sort of thing. But so as Barney was driving to the outskirts to find a motel, he decided that he did not want to drive through Montreal city traffic again, and he decided to head toward New Hampshire, deciding to stop along the way if they grew tired. And so, they drove on. It's not that long a trip, something like 175 miles between Montreal and New Hampshire. And finally, they arrived in New Hampshire and had a little snack, checked their watches, rewound their watches, and headed south on Route 3 through upstate New Hampshire. That was a U.S. highway. Okay. So, not a little back road, but the largest road in upstate New Hampshire in that time frame. And even today, except for if you go to the furthest western part. So anyway, they are driving through, and Betty spotted a new light in the sky, and the light started to move in closer and closer to them, and it sparked her curiosity. She asked Barney to stop so that she could get a better look at it. And this was south of a town called Twin Mountain. It was now, probably about a little before 11 in the evening.
Cars on the road at that time?
It was the off season. So there were some, but not many.
Okay.
So they got out of the car, and Barney went to the trunk. He had a pistol back there and hidden in the wheel well. And he took the pistol out because he was going to walk the dog in the woods, and there were picnic tables and picnic trash cans, and he was afraid of bears. So he thought he'd fire the gun into the air to scare off bears if they came out of the woods. So, they looked at this craft in the sky that had unusual lighting. Barney tried to dismiss it, especially to Betty, because she was pointing out how unusual it was, and he liked to contradict anything that she had to say, sort of to chide her. And so they got back into the car, and they're driving along, and the craft starts closing in closer and closer. Finally, they stop again, at an area called the Old Man of the Mountain. And this is in Franconia Notch. It's a scenic, unpopulated area, sort of like a big natural site. And so they got out of the car at the Old Man of the Mountain because the craft had stopped and hovered right beside the old man's profile. And its profile was 48 feet from forehead to chin. It was an old man's profile, obviously, from the title. And as it hovered, they noticed that it was at least 1.5 to 2 times the length of the old man's profile. It appeared to be lighted on only one side, and it was rotating. And they got back into the car, sort of shaking their heads that, this doesn't look like anything we've seen before. Barney really wanted to identify it as something prosaic because he did not believe that extraterrestrial visitation was possible. So they got back into their vehicle and started driving down the highway. And this craft started bouncing back and forth in the sky. And Barney would stop in the road from time to time, but not for long, just momentarily to look up. And he did describe it as reminding him of a yo-yo, where you would throw the yo-yo out and then it would fly back, flick your wrist, and it would fly back in your direction. So that was the kind of motion that this craft was making. And it reminds me of the military officers who described the tic-tac as behaving like a ping pong ball. So, I suspect that they were describing the same kind of behavior. So they continued driving south. They exited the south entrance of Franconia Notch and passed an area called Indian Head and the Indian Head Resort. Now, there is a memorial marker, a historical marker, set up by the state of New Hampshire Historical Society for Betty and Barney in front of this hotel now.
Because you were part of getting that written and put up there, right?
Yes, there was a New Hampshire man who instigated this and had a petition with something like 50 signatures of people who wanted to see that happen. And then he contacted me, and the state wanted me to write the material and wanted me to submit something like 25 pieces of evidence that this event actually occurred. So I did that, and finally in 2011, they erected it in that location. I was in touch with them the entire time, and we discussed where it should go. But the Indian Head Resort had plenty of room and parking space so that people could stop at the side of the road or in the Indian Head Resort's parking lot and walk to the historical marker. I was so proud and pleased that the state erected that marker. But getting back to what happened to Betty and Barney, they were a mile or two south of the Indian Head Resort when this craft surged ahead of them and descended to within 200 feet of their vehicle in the air. And Barney had to stop the car directly in the middle of the road so that he wouldn't be underneath it. And he grabbed his binoculars, he opened the door of the car and stepped out onto the pavement and looked up at this craft through binoculars. And at that time, he could see that the craft was no longer rotating, that it was silent and hovering. He saw a row of windows with blue light, intense light shining through, and 2 little lights on either side of this craft. Betty looked up through the passenger side of the window of the car, and she saw the same thing. At this point, it was so huge that they told Pease Air Force Base when they filed a report the following day, and this was September 21st when they filed the report, but it was after midnight on September 20th, and from the 19th to the 20th, when they had this experience with the close encounter. And so Barney looked up at this, and then he stepped away and from the car for a less encumbered view. And when he did, the craft passed in front of their vehicle over to an adjacent field that would have been to the left or to the east of where he was standing. He followed that into this farmer's field. I have a photograph that the original investigator took, and in that time frame, there was a farm stand and apple trees there. And so that is all very well documented. Now, Betty and Barney, when they were looking up at that craft through the windshield, told Pease Air Force Base that it was the size of a dinner plate held at arm's length. Now, keep in mind that the full moon is the size of an aspirin held at arm's length. So you can imagine how close that was. So Barney stood in that field looking through binoculars, shaking his head. He could not believe what he was seeing. The craft had descended even lower. It was now only about 100 feet in the air, and he estimated about 50 feet away from him, from where he was standing if he were to measure upward toward where that craft was. He saw figures staring down at him, and they were somehow not human, he told the first investigator, Walter Webb, from the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. It's all documented in the original reports in September and October of 1961. Now, Barney saw all but one of these figures who was standing at the window turn and move to what appeared to be some kind of a panel. Their arms went up, and when this occurred, the little red lights started to slide out from the craft, and something started to drop down out of the bottom of the craft. The one who remained at the window was staring down at Barney and frightened him terribly. Immediately, Barney sensed that he was going to be captured. He said, like a bug in a net. And this is when he pulled the binoculars away from his eyes so forcefully that he broke the leather strap and went screaming back to the car, telling Betty that they had to get out of there or they were going to be captured. Now, he looked back in the direction of the craft as he entered the car and saw that it was moving in his direction. He had left the car running, and so he got in very, very rapidly, threw the car into gear, and went speeding down the highway. Within moments, he and Betty heard a series of code-like buzzing sounds striking the trunk of the car. He likened this sound to the sound of a dropped tuning fork. And when they heard these sounds, their car vibrated. They felt kind of an electrical tingling sensation. And the next thing they knew, they were 30 to 35 miles down the highway. They heard a second series of buzzing sounds that restored them to full consciousness. And Betty turned to Barney and said, "Well, Barney, now do you believe in flying saucers?" And he said, "Oh, Betty, don't be ridiculous." He was just, again, giving her a hard time. He said that. So to let people know that he knew what was going on, but that he was just giving Betty a hard time, which was his way. I think she was the oldest child in the family and thought that, and she liked to boss people around. He was the youngest child in the family and was always sort of irritated by her behavior.
Did they call you your family immediately? How did your family get involved? Like, what transpired after that?
Yes, when they arrived home, they left their luggage in the trunk of the vehicle. The craft had come so low, they felt that they might have been contaminated. They went into the house. Betty checked her watch and it had stopped running, so she went inside and she set her watch by the time on the clock. I have that watch. It says 5:16. So they planned on arriving home between 2 and 3. So they were missing at least a couple of hours. And Betty's dress was torn in several places. Barney's best shoes were so deeply scraped that he had to buy new shoes. There were all these memories that they were having initially, and then they just started to fade. But that after they took a nap, they sat down and they drew what they had observed from memory. And they both took very long showers before they went to bed because they were fearful that they had been contaminated. And by afternoon that day, they were both up, and Betty called my mother.
Okay.
We lived only about 19 miles away from Betty and Barney. I was arriving home from school that day, a 13-year-old schoolgirl, and I went into the house and my mother was on the phone with Betty. So I overheard the conversation. And then I asked my mother about it, and she told me about Betty and Barney's trip and that they'd seen a flying saucer, is what they were called in those days.
Sure.
And so my mother was waiting to call our neighbor, who was a physicist. And when he arrived home from work, she called him. And he told my mother to tell Betty that if she had a compass, she should take it out to the car to see how the needle would react. So Betty did that, and she saw new shiny spots on the trunk that had not been there the previous day. When she held the compass along the sides of the car, the needle acted normally. But when she held the compass over these shiny spots, the needle whirled, indicating a magnetic field. Barney didn't want to believe it, but she insisted that he come out and see it, and he did. Also, their upstairs neighbors saw it, and I saw those spots a couple of days later when my family, my parents, drove my two brothers and myself to Betty's and Barney's house. So I was sort of involved in this investigation, in this case, from the very beginning. I was a big fan of Nancy Drew. It was my favorite book series, Girl Detective.
Yes.
So I was trying to be a detective, I guess, from the onset of this investigation.
So did you see the compass as well? Did you do the compass experiment?
Well, according to what Betty told Dr. Simon 2.5 years later under hypnosis, she had not shown it to anyone except for on day one of that event. But so I don't know if I saw it or not. If she didn't remember correctly, or if I didn't remember correctly, I thought I had seen it. I definitely saw the spots. Let me put it that way.
Go away at any time, or did they stay on the car?
Magnetic spots would stay on the vehicle, or the magnetic field would stay around the vehicle. The story is that they eventually faded away. That's one person's statement. Another person's statement was that the spots were still there when they sold the vehicle.
Interesting. So when you said they were worried about contamination, what contamination what were they referring to at that time?
Oh, they were referring to cosmic rays or viruses or bacteria, radiation, anything like that. Yes.
Did I know that you submitted some of that as evidence in the archives at the university. Is that correct? University in Northern or New Hampshire?
Yes. Yes. In fact, I am presently working on my own limited archive for the University of New Hampshire, too. My major archival collection is going to go to Rice University, to the Archives of the Impossible. But I'm also contributing some of my research on Betty's and Barney's case to UNH. Some of my research is already there.
Okay. So who can access that information?
Anyone from the public can access it, but you have to make an appointment.
And you also have the map on your website of the route that Betty and Barney took. Is that?
I do.
Okay.
I do. It's
We do that route now in New Hampshire.
Yes. Anyone can do that. Route 3B is still there, but parts of it have been paved over and are part of Route 93, the interstate highway, which was not constructed that far north in 1961. But you can travel on most of the route that Betty and Barney traveled on Route 3. And in fact, many years ago, my husband and I traveled the entire route that they took on their vacation, stopping at the spots where they stopped. And it was an incredible trip. One of the deniers has told the public that Betty and Barney had been driving for 18 hours straight when they had their first sighting of this craft, and they must have been hallucinating. So I was wondering, since my husband and I were about 20 years older than Betty and Barney at the time that we took our trip, if we would be hallucinating, and we were not.
I mean, intuitively, and as a woman, we both know that you have to stop and use the bathroom, and you cannot drive for 18 hours straight. And they had a dog as well in the car. Is that correct?
That is correct. So
dogs do not just forget to go to the bathroom. So
that's right.
They will let you know. So, that's ridiculous.
Yes, Betty and Barney stopped in Montreal. They stopped to eat 3 times. They, stopped to walk the dog. They stopped to use the bathroom. All of those things. They were on vacation. They were having a great time. They were well rested from the night before. Barney said, and just enjoying the last few hours of their vacation trip.
That's really interesting. Well, so did your family ever experience any other alien contact, or did Betty and Barney experience more abduct? I mean, did they ever admit that they had been abducted? Did they call it an abduction, or what did they refer to?
Well, their information was supposed to remain confidential. They were willing to speak with scientists and with military officers. They told the family and close friends, but we were sworn to secrecy. But one of the wives of a military officer ended up violating confidentiality and speaking to a newspaper reporter. The reporter was from the Boston Traveler. And in 1965, he did his own investigation, and he published columns in the Boston Traveler for 5 days in a row. And it traveled as far away as Australia.
It's
those articles.
Information, of course, it would travel.
Yes. Big news.
Yes. So,
but very distressing for Betty and Barney.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how did they handle that information coming out like that?
They contacted Dr. Benjamin Simon. They were extraordinarily distressed. How did John Luttrell from the Boston Traveler get this information? I have a letter from Betty's friend who actually spoke to him, and she denied it, but I have a letter from him where he named her. And this is why I know that she spoke with him. And he'd been speaking to many other people, investigators to the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena and to the Air Force. So he'd spoken to a lot of people. And he treated the Hills respectfully, but he published their address in the newspaper articles. So you can imagine the level of privacy they had that week.
Yes. So was it a huge news frenzy? Like they have reporters coming directly to their house at that?
Yes. Yes, their house was surrounded. One night they went to a friend's house. He was an officer at Pease Air Force Base, and they stayed there until very late. Another night they drove down to my grandparents' house. I grew up across the street from my grandparents, and we all met as a family. And Barney was particularly distraught. He was a civil rights leader in the state of New Hampshire. He'd been appointed to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. He'd received an award from Sergeant Shriver for his work with funding through the National War on Poverty program to set up the Rockingham County Community Action Program. He'd received an award for voters' rights for setting up a literacy program in the state of New Hampshire. He was well known for the good work he was doing. And this was absolutely devastating. He did not take it well at all. And
how did they, what was the intention of the man who shared all of this information with the public or with the reporter? And what was his intention? Was he disbelieving? What did he want from that?
Are you talking about the person who violated confidentiality and talked to the newspaper reporter? This was a woman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This was a woman, Betty's friend, and she had listened to some of the hypnosis tapes and had talked with Betty. And I don't know why she did this. She always denied that she had.
So she never apologized or?
No.
I'm sorry.
No, I think she ended up having a stroke. I recall that, we used to have family get-togethers and she would be there. So, and then I knew that she had a stroke. So I don't know if this had caused her stroke or what, but I can understand if it had.
Yeah. So, were you involved in the media frenzy at all? Did you ever get approached by any of the reporters or?
No, I was not involved in the media frenzy. I was still in high school.
Okay.
I was in my senior year.
How did your friends?
Well, they had a different take on me. I was a class officer. I was a secretary of the student council, and so I was pretty popular in school as a school leader. But people would chide me, and I just took it in stride. I had a good sense of humor. But for my senior yearbook. I was, what would I do in the future? I think it was something like being an astronaut, one of the first female astronauts, or something like that, that kind of thing. So, my youngest brother did not have that kind of luck. He had kind of a chip on his shoulder and was involved in some fisticuffs about it. Unfortunately.
Do you feel that they had more experiences than that particular one, Betty and Barney? Had they been in contact after that, or had they had previous contact with non-human entities?
Well, let me say that Betty and Barney would never admit that they had additional contact. However, family members quietly insisted that they had.
Interesting. Why was that?
Because they were missing. One of them was missing. There were close encounters. There were craft landing in our neighborhood, a craft seen over Betty's and Barney's home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. There was a lot going on. Other people were being taken.
In their neighborhood?
Yes.
Or in their family?
I know of 2 in the family, maybe 3. I know of others in the neighborhood. This has never been made public. I've never written about it, and I won't.
Okay. So what kind of, was it the same craft, same shape, same entities?
Yes, basically the same entities, basically the same type of craft.
And this was a cigar-shaped craft, is that correct?
It was cigar-shaped when it was in the distance, but it appeared to be disc-shaped up close.
Okay. And were these grays, that, as we know them now, the small gray aliens?
There were 2 sizes. One was 5 feet to a little bit taller. The others were 3.5 to 4 feet tall. Their skin was gray. They did not have any hair on their bodies. They did not have ears. They had large eyes, not black eyes. They had very dark pupils and irises with a little yellow around the outside where our white would be, only not as much as our white.
Okay.
The iris took up more space. Very flat, upturned noses, upturned nostrils, I should say. A slit for a mouth. Communication was telepathic. So you might say the grays, but not the little stereotypical grays. They were slightly different.
Okay. And are these the same, what do you call them, the class of alien? How do you determine, what do you call them?
I just call them the type. Okay. So, yes, they were gray type aliens.
Okay. And were they the same ones that the other people were experiencing in the neighborhood and in the family?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Were you abducted?
I had an experience when I was 17 years old. Betty was working with a team of scientists to try to call in a craft to land on my grandparents' farm.
Okay.
Twice, craft came in and landed. One of those times, there were 2 witnesses to the craft. And on that particular night, my mother and I remembered finding ourselves on that craft. But we swore never to speak of it. We were going to take it to our graves. I made the mistake of speaking of it a few years ago when I was part of a panel discussion at Contact in the Desert. And I later grew to regret the fact that I had spoken of it.
Why is that?
Ridicule.
I'm so sorry. I just don't understand it, honestly. I think it's, to me, it just makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't we have contact with, why wouldn't we?
I agree.
I mean, we have contact with bugs and birds and all kinds of different species all the time. What's the big difference?
I agree with you.
I mean, they're humanoid in shape sometimes they're not, but I have contact with ghosts, so I feel all paranormal things are really actually normal. We just don't see them all.
I believe that they're carrying on a longitudinal, intergenerational study on humans. They say, they've told experiencers that, and I have a long history working with experiencers, thousands, and 4 surveys with about more than 5,000 experiencers who indicate that the ETs are here for our survival. That they are very concerned about our use of nuclear weapons. They're very concerned about our failure to be good stewards to the environment of our planet. And there was a mistake somehow made in the human species, where especially those who have the most money and the most control care little about our survival. They're more concerned about the accumulation of power and wealth. And so, it contradicts what we should do if we want this planet to survive.
So do you feel that's in all of your research with, I really want to talk about your research here in a minute, but I kind of want to go back to your experience with your aunt and uncle. And I know that your uncle died in 1969.
Yes. He had a massive cerebral hemorrhage.
After all of this.
Yes. This was made public in 1965. John Fuller wrote the first book on it with Betty and Barney and Dr. Simon's cooperation in 1966. It became a New York Times bestseller, and Barney was dead in 1969, 3 years later.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's so sad.
It is.
Did you feel as a family that he died so early because of his interaction with the aliens?
I don't know if it was his interaction with them or if it was all of the stress and the ridicule and everything that came along with that, the disbelief. And Barney was such an honest man. And, he was in the public eye, he was a leader among people in New Hampshire. When suddenly, he had been invited to Lyndon Johnson's inauguration for his merit. And all of a sudden, instead of being viewed as such a wonderful, intelligent leader, he was viewed as some kind of a kook and ridiculed.
It's so sad. So
it is sad.
Had cancer, is that correct?
Barney died from a cerebral hemorrhage.
Okay, it was your aunt that had cancer.
Yes, Betty died from lung cancer.
Okay, so yeah, and his death was very sudden as well, right?
It was very sudden, yes.
I'm so sorry. I know, I can only imagine how stressful that would have been.
Oh, it was awful. I was a college student at the time. I ended up moving in with Betty and lived with her for a couple of years.
So it was, how did she handle going forward all of the continued interest? Because now she was kind of alone in her experience, and she it seems that she eventually took it in stride.
Yes.
What was that process like for her?
Well, I think that there was more interest from women toward Betty after Barney died, and so she became friendly with a group of women who believed that it was real, who had a great deal of interest in this topic. Some of them had their own ET contact experiences. Some of them were psychics. And she enjoyed herself with this group of individuals. She stopped worrying about what other people, and particularly men, debunkers and deniers and researchers thought. And she wanted to get to the truth. She wanted to learn as much as she possibly could about what happened to her. And so she began to conduct her own experiments and trying to call in craft and that kind of thing. So
Did it work? Did she?
Yes.
Okay. So
it did work.
Have regular telepathic conversations?
I'm not aware of telepathic conversations, but she would send telepathic messages.
Okay.
And she would wait. They wouldn't come immediately. She would gauge the amount of time that it took from her sending the telepathic message until they would show themselves to her in a certain location.
So how would they do that? Would they show up as in a craft, or would they show up? How would they show up?
It would be a craft that she would see.
Did she ever photograph these encounters?
She did photograph some, yes. She took video footage.
Okay.
And, of course, the men in the field would ridicule her and say she didn't know what she was photographing. But Betty had photo analysts who were developing the film. And when they ridiculed her, she didn't say, well, I have photo analysts who tell me this. She wouldn't even respond to them. She would just say, oh, let them believe what they want to believe. Essentially, she was tired of the fight.
I don't blame her at all.
So yes, there were photo analysts, and she had some very interesting photos, two particularly interesting photos, one of a fiery orb in the sky, okay, and another one of a craft that appears to have something looking out the window of this craft.
Interesting. So did she, when they arrived, then did she have any interaction with them as far as telepathically, or was it just more of a showing themselves?
It was more a showing themselves to her or a few people who might be with her. But after she would have that kind of experience, I'm aware that on 2 occasions, the person who was riding in the car with her and Betty had a missing time experience where the car seemed to be sort of going up a hill or lifting up and being set down on another stretch of the road.
Interesting. Do you feel that most, from all of your research, do you feel that the way people are abducted is kind of like Star Trek, the transporter, where, they're teleported from, I think Star Trek is such a great example of that, because you stand on this circle and your molecules are basically dispersed and, dematerialized and then rematerialized. Do you feel that that's kind of how they do it?
In a sense, I think that, and I've spoken to physicists about this. How is it possible that people report that they have been taken through solid surfaces? Now, Betty always used to say, if somebody told me that, I would ask them what the repair bill cost. But I was more open-minded about this than Betty. And so the physicist told me to remember that 99.9% of an atom is empty space. And that all you have to do is align the frequency and the phase of the atom, and that atoms can interpenetrate. So if you align the frequency and phase of the human body to the wall, to the frequency of the portal, and I call it portal, that the ETs come through because I have photographs of these portals with the ETs coming out of them, then not taken by me, taken by others, yes, I think that is what occurs, that they have the technology, I believe it's technology, to bring the human being through solid surfaces and into their environment, wherever that happens to be. And when the human being arrives, it seems very physical as being in an earthly environment, only it's not an earthly environment. It's inside this highly technologically advanced structure. And, where they have physical exams, where they have communication, where they receive information and warnings, essentially about atomic war, nuclear war, environmental disasters, that sort of thing.
That's the majority of the messages that you have collected from all of the research that you've done?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, well, obviously it's a physical environment. I mean, to me, all the research, not only that you've done, but so many people report actual damage to their body, like their physical body. They have marks, they have little dips where samples have been taken from them. I mean, you can't do that if it's not a physical experience.
I agree with that. And I have a whole catalog of marks on people's bodies, and people from around the world are receiving the same patterned marks.
Interesting. Do you feel it's pretty much the same species doing most of these abductions?
There are several different species. There's the grays, the mantis types, the human-looking types, the reptilian-looking types, and those are the major ones. There are lots of variations on those themes.
Okay.
And so some people will say there are 45 types, but essentially they
kind of fit under those categories.
Yes, they do.
Okay. So the human-looking ones, are you referring to the Nordics? What people describe as Nordics with the blue eyes?
Yes, light-colored only. I have investigated cases where the people are people of color, and these entities are appearing to them as people of color.
Interesting. So are they the people who you've researched who have experienced abductions by these different species, they still have the same marks.
Yes. Well, different species might have different marks.
Okay.
Let me put it that way. I'm wondering if they're identifiers.
So what categories would you say of research are they doing on humans, do you think?
The grays and the mantis types are essentially doing experiments with reproduction. And let me first back up a moment and say that they work together as well. I have cases where the mantis types, and even photographs from those cases, where mantis types are working with human types, the Nordic types. I also have cases where the mantis are working with grays. I have reptilians working with a certain type of gray, which is not as nice as the others, nor are the reptilians as nice, but there are nice reptilians as well. So in the reports, all of them have a bad reputation, but all of them have a good reputation too, depending upon their interactions with the experiencer.
So when you say you have pictures, what kinds of pictures do you have?
Photographs taken by experiencers just prior to an abduction or a contact event. In one of my major cases that happened in 2015, they were researchers, very well known and with a great reputation, published, had a movie made about them, and they wanted to meet an experiencer who was a confirmed abductee or experiencer. So I introduced them to that experiencer, and they arranged to go up, and they set up their equipment, and were ready to do this experiment. They're out in his backyard at night. His wife is in the house. The two women researchers are there holding their equipment. They have a camera set up in a different part of the yard. It's a Bell and Howell night vision video camera. And the three who are on the other side of a hedge in a different part of the yard, and the experiencer is calling in craft. One comes in, and it's coming closer and closer, and the researchers are asking questions, recording on a ghost box the replies, and
is that
all of a sudden,
with the static, like the radio channels?
yes.
Okay.
It is that kind of thing, and they had a recorder. And so this is going on. The craft is coming in, and then all of a sudden, they're no longer holding their equipment. They're no longer exactly in the location that they were in. They are standing, they're holding on to each other, weaving, they're feeling nauseated, wondering what happened. And then they put the equipment, they look for the equipment, they find it under a bush, and they pick up the camera, they go into the experiencer's home, and his wife is there, and she says, "Where have you been?" And they said, "Oh, just outside in the yard." And she says, "No, you have not. I've been looking for you. Do you know what time it is?" And a couple of hours have passed. And so North Carolina MUFON investigated that case, wrote their report, and then I was the director of MUFON's experiencer research team at that time, and I did my own investigation, but also independently, I did hypnosis on both of the women, and I interviewed the man. And their stories agreed in detail. I interviewed the women and did their hypnosis sessions a year apart. They were not speaking because they had a falling out because one of them, they had some conscious recall, and one of them remembered one type of entity, the other remembered a different type of entity, and they had a big fight about this because they did not know that you could have two types on the same craft. So I had to set that straight for them. But, it was just truly amazing that they, on that night vision video camera, recorded a few seconds of these non-humans on camera.
Wow. So what did they capture? What species?
Well, first you could see it was like a beam of light, a blue-violet beam of light shoot across the yard. And then like a fairy dropping off. I know it sounds so crazy, a fairy dropping off this beam. And seemed to grow in size as she came closer. There was another one who was sitting on the ground and was enveloped in blue light and rose into the air, and it was a mantis type. And to actually see what it looked like was just shocking. And it was riding on some kind of technology, like a chair that it was connected to. And it just glided across the yard in front of the camera and had a blue light in one hand and was just moving, looking back and forth, looking for those humans that it finally found and captured in blue light. There was another one that appeared to be sitting in a tree that was a mantis type. And I got a really good look at this. And then there was another one that was standing closer to the camera that was dressed all in black. Some people who have looked at it, the analysts, believe that it was facing away from the camera. I think it was facing toward the camera because in one of the photographs that I have from that video, you can actually see a chiseled nose, a mouth, and two little eyes, beady eyes.
like a man in black, almost.
Well, but it was not a man in black. I mean, he was dressed in a dark uniform. That's what it looked like at night in front of that camera. But when they were on the craft, they were men dressed in blue uniforms.
Okay.
That looked human. I mean, humanoid.
Yeah.
But Nordic.
Blonde hair?
Light brown hair.
Okay. Do you, I want to see this. I want to see. How can people see this footage? Is there any way to see?
Yes, you can see it by going to PamelaNance.com.
Okay, that's PAM
ELA Nance NANCE.
And what do they look for once they go there?
Oh gosh. You'll be able to find it. It would have something to do.
I'll look it up and I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, yeah, it's been a while since I looked at it.
I want to see, so I will check it out and I will put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Now she has her own interpretation of this that she came up with after I had done the investigation. I can't say that I agree with her interpretation, but she's entitled to it. You know, I could very well be wrong in my interpretation.
So do you, in your experience, did you experience two species in your?
I did not.
Okay.
Only Only 2 sizes of grays.
Okay. Well, I know that Colonel Carl, all of a sudden Nell has also corroborated that information.
Mm-hmm.
I believe to Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that?
Yes.
Okay, so he can you tell people about that report? Do you know of that report?
I don't have all of his interview. I saw him giving testimony. Oh, I think it was on for Danny Sheehan's group, the constitutional lawyer Danny Sheehan's group.
Yes.
So, yes, and
he was reporting on the groups, the species that we...
No, I have not seen his report on the species.
Okay. It was more just the proof that we are interacting with non-human intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, speaking of your hypnosis experience, you are a professional hypnotherapist, correct?
I have retired now.
Okay.
And
did you ever hypnotize your Aunt Betty?
She would not permit me to, but I did as close as I possibly could to hypnosis, where I was doing an interview with her, and I was moving her head moment by moment until she became so distressed that she had to stop the interview.
That's too bad.
Yes, I felt terrible that even that late in her life, as she was actually going in and reliving it moment by moment, she would become that distressed.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, did you get information during that time that, like new information or anything that you were surprised about?
Not really.
Okay.
No,
no new information.
Not from Betty, no.
So, do you feel that people are still regularly being abducted, or is this have abductions changed over time?
I believe that they have changed over time, that there's less of a physical emphasis. And if they do have to do something physical, they tend to do it in your home now instead of taking us to craft. And I believe that they are aware that moving between those environments time and time again has a deleterious effect on the human body, that a very large percentage of experiencers, 34% in one of my studies and 44 or 45% in another study, have a medical diagnosis of chronic fatigue and immune dysfunction syndrome. Although when I did those studies, it was less than 1% in the general population.
Interesting. Yeah, one of the things I love about your book is how thorough you are about all the different information that you have gathered, and give percentages, and how many people have experienced this and how many have not experienced that. And I find it fascinating, and I love the fact that you've recorded so much of that. And some of it's just fascinating information. Like, one of the things that stuck out to me was a huge percentage seemed to crave salt more than others.
Yes.
Who hadn't experienced alien contact.
Yes.
And what is your take on that? I mean, it's just kind of a strange thing.
Yes, and when I discovered that, I could not understand why experiencers. I mean, most people crave salt. People eat potato chips and French fries all the time, but these individuals, I had two groups when Denise Stoner and I did the Marden Stoner survey or on what ET contact or abduction experiencers. I did that way back in 2012 and 13 with Denise. And so I don't have a really clear memory of it. But there was some kind of disease that would be associated with that. Now, you can go to my website and you can find that my write-up, my report on that study and on another study that I did as well. And it's at Kathleen-Marden.com.
And spell your last name for people?
It's Marden.
And you have a dash between Kathleen and Marden.
Yes.
Okay, it's Kathleen-Marden.com.
Yes.
And I will also put that in the show notes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what do you think about that? Craving salt? Is it just an anomaly, or is it something that's been explained?
I have not been able to explain it in terms of medical science. It's just an anomaly as far as I can tell, but who knows? There's a lot more research that needs to be done.
So when you talk about, there's so many things, I'm not even close to having all my questions answered. I'm so curious. So when you talk about the groups that you gathered together through your research, you had people who weren't sure that they had been abducted. You had different groups of people. I couldn't remember.
Yes, with my background in social research, you need the experiencer group, but you also need a control group for comparison. Okay. So, people from the general public who deny ever having seen a UFO or interest in that topic or in UFO abduction or, contact experience. So you need to use both groups in order to determine the differences. So that's what we did.
Do you believe it's possible for someone to have been abducted and not remember anything?
I don't. There are a lot of researchers. Most will say, yes, you can have an abduction and you could be abducted all your life and not remember a thing. I will tell you that the majority of people that I have worked with who have credible cases have some conscious recall.
Is it immediate recall, or is it later after the experience?
It's usually immediate. It's when the ETs come into their environment, or the craft is very close and they see the ETs, or maybe they've just seen orbs, a craft and orbs close to them, because sometimes these non-humans appear as orbs but then expand into non-human forms.
What do you think that's all about?
That's a good question. How do they do that? Yeah. I would like to know.
Is that their craft? Is this light?
The orbs can communicate. So they appear to contain ET consciousness.
Okay. I saw a really effective experience with that on the show. Is it Aliens in Alaska or something like that?
There was a show by that name.
Yeah.
By that title.
There was an experience, and I lived in Alaska. I also lived in New Hampshire, by the way.
Did you?
I lived in Newmarket.
Oh, Well, I lived in Newmarket at one time when I was in college.
Yeah.
Yes, before I moved in with Betty.
Yeah, that's cool. I lived in Newmarket for a little while when I was riding my bike around New England by myself. I shared a house with some other students. I wasn't a student, but I shared with them when I wasn't on my bike.
Mm-hmm.
But I lived in Alaska for many years, and so I was really curious about that show. And in that show, there's an episode where an orb communicates with this woman and comes closer and then darts away and then comes closer, and it's different colors, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually got some pictures of them.
Mm-hmm. You can do that. I have many photographs that experiencers in my cases have taken of these conscious orbs, and sometimes you can see what appears to be a non-human face inside them. I don't know if it's pareidolia or if it is actually the face of an ET, but they're amazing. In one of my cases, the experiencer had been diagnosed with cancer and was asking the ETs to heal him. And he captured this beautiful blue orb with a white and echro center coming down his wall, flying across the room, and diving down into his body. He lost consciousness. And when he woke up 12 hours later, the nodes were no longer visible. When he went in to have his surgery, he no longer had cancer. 4 necrotic nodes, or 3, were removed. Pretty amazing. So the ETs aren't all bad.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I know you wrote a book, and I definitely read it. E.T. Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend for people who may experience or have experienced abduction?
Well, if you have conscious recall, I recommend that you immediately write down everything you remember. The date, the time, check your body out. If you have a UV light, use it to see if there's any fluorescence on your body. You might find fluorescence that is in geometric patterns. And if you find that, go into a dark closet and photograph it. As long as you're not photographing your genital area, because investigators don't want to look at that. You can keep it for yourself.
Good point.
But and if you have fluorescence in a genital area, it just could be yeast as well. So there are prosaic explanations for fluorescence, but if it's in a geometric pattern on your limbs or somewhere like that, then photograph it in a dark closet without a flash. Keep a journal, or you could even dictate into your cell phone and keep the pictures in your cell phone, whatever. But keep a record of what has occurred. And if you decide that you do want to go to a hypnotist, make sure you find a good one, someone who's very well trained and experienced in that field. You definitely want someone who knows how to work with experiencers and who is going to take steps to make sure that you're not confabulating information. And, so you're not having false memories emerge, because the possibility that you could confabulate with someone who is not a good hypnotist is pretty high, particularly when that person has an agenda and believes that everyone.
How do you know what are you looking for in a hypnotherapist that is...
You want someone who's not going to ask leading questions.
Okay.
You want someone who has experience in forensics, forensic hypnosis, and also someone who has experience with post-traumatic stress disorder. They have studied that in their training. You might want somebody who is a psychotherapist who uses this as part of their practice, particularly if you're feeling traumatized.
Sure.
To help you to work through that.
Would you say the majority of people feel traumatized after an experience?
I would say that initially the majority feel traumatized until they have worked through their memories. And that is for non-consensual contact. Now, a lot of people today are having consensual contact. They're calling in these interdimensional entities and communicating with them, and that's consensual, and it's all loving and very nice. It doesn't involve physical contact and the medical examination, that sort of thing.
So once you have gone to the hypnotherapist, what do you do next?
During the session or after the session?
After the session, if you want to carry it further than that.
Well, the hypnotherapist might have a support group for experiencers that he or she has worked with. It's really a good idea to find a support group, other individuals that you can share your experiences with, that you can talk with. Even before you have hypnosis, you might want to do that. Or maybe you don't want hypnosis and you'd like to be part of just a support group. Okay. Because in a support group, people find they have memories, but someone else will mention that they have that memory. And it is sort of confirmation to people that they weren't just imagining this, that the memory was real.
You know, that's one of the things that I think is so powerful about meeting with other people who are intuitive. And, you know, that's one of the things that I do as a psychic medium. A lot of times is just validate your experience.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'm sorry. Yes, some of the people that I have worked with have gone to psychic mediums to help and have received some help in working through any of the trauma they had. They receive answers.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's very healthy because once you tap into, you share that energy between you, and it is extremely validating and empowering.
Yes, it is.
Do you feel that I know you're a very analytical minded person because you're able to do this extensive research, and it's so the legacy that you're leaving and you're creating of all of this evidence over the years is just phenomenal. So I just want to thank you for all that you've done on behalf of humanity and the experiences that so many people have experienced. So thank you for doing that.
Well, of course. And it has been quite a journey for me. I'm a very curious person and I wanted answers. I was a teacher at one time. I was also a social worker. And when I learn new information, I share it with others who are interested in this topic.
I think that's the beauty of a teacher. I mean, I'm a teacher as well, and I feel like once you understand something, as Einstein said, you can explain it easily, and it just makes it more bite-sized for people, because I think, especially someone like you who's done so much scientific research.
Yes.
It's so overwhelming for for the layperson to read, and you make it so understandable. And that's why I love your books and the things
thank you.
that I've gotten to read, because you make it so bite-sized.
Yes, I don't write for scientists. I write for the general public, the interested public.
And you've done a beautiful job with that.
Thank you.
Do you feel that you are intuitive as well?
I'm somewhat intuitive, according to my friends.
How do you feel that has informed some of your, like, what is at the heart of what you have done over your lifetime of all of this gathering of information? What do you hope people take away from?
I hope that people take away the idea that these ETs are not here to harm us, that they have our best interest in mind, that they are concerned about human behavior. They tell experiencers, and I haven't mentioned this yet, that they are concerned that our technological progress is out of sync with our spiritual growth. And that when there is this imbalance, it can present a huge problem for the population of any planet and could lead to the disintegration of the species of life on that planet. And one of their greatest concerns is raising the consciousness, raising the level of spirituality among experiencers. And so most experiencers that I have worked with who have had, I believe, have really had these experiences are just really wonderful people. They are psychic. They are intuitive. They are empaths. They are very concerned about our environment. They're really terrific examples, in my estimation, of what a very fine human being should be.
Do you feel that there is a way? I'm not sure how to ask the question. Do you feel that there are more empaths now than before? Or do you feel that we have, as a human race, we've kind of devolved from being empaths and empathic and telepathic? And, because to me, as an empath, I understand energy to the point where it's telepathic to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I get information from animals and people and, just telepathically through energy. And I'm curious about that. Like, do you feel that we started out more empathic and have devolved, or are we rising to a new level of consciousness and awareness?
Well, as I look back in history, there was a time where people were supposedly more superstitious. And along with these superstitions came a heightened sense of psychic awareness, and perhaps certain people were empathic, certainly not the killers, but the other people in society, the religious groups, the healers, that kind of thing. And then there was a backlash against this by the scientific community. And it was almost taboo to even admit that you had these qualities. And so people would suppress them, particularly if you were scientifically oriented like myself. But we are, many of us, are empaths today, and particularly those who have had contact with these non-humans or have been around individuals who have sought answers and who have looked deeper, such as meditation, as contact with these interdimensional entities, communication, that kind of thing. It's just part of the process.
So you kind of feel like we're getting back to the way we were meant to be?
Some of us.
Yeah. I mean, obviously not all of us, unfortunately. I just find that interesting because I meet so many empaths. I think we attract each other, we just have that natural understanding of each other. And so our energy is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I attract a lot of empaths, and I think a lot of empaths feel so overwhelmed with all the energy in the world, and it drives us almost to become hermits to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
We can't deal with all the energy, and it wears us out.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for that, for dealing with overwhelm of energy?
No, I don't know how to overcome that feeling if you're in a crowd and you are sensing the mood of the crowd. It would be helpful if somebody knew how to shut themselves down during that situation, putting a protective bubble around yourself. But, if you keep yourself open to it, then you're going to feel it. You're going to experience it. And it can be very distressing.
Do you think that is similar? That's somewhat of the chronic fatigue syndrome that is prevalent amongst experiencers?
I really don't know. A medical doctor who wrote about a case of chronic fatigue syndrome where there was a healing, described chronic fatigue syndrome, and the latest updated understanding is that it is exhaustion at a cellular level. So something is going on with the cellular growth, the cells themselves in the body, where they are not receiving the energy that they need. Now, I don't know if it has anything to do with them being empaths or what it is precisely.
Okay, yeah, I'm so curious about that because for years I had chronic fatigue, and you describe in your studies some of the what is it, recurring mononucleosis?
Yes, that was the term that was used prior to chronic fatigue and immune dysfunction syndromes being named by the medical community.
What is it called now?
As far as I know, it's still being called chronic fatigue and immune dysfunction syndrome in the United States.
Okay. Do you find that to be similar across other countries as well? I mean, research mostly based in the United States, or is it across countries?
Well, it's across English-speaking countries, but mostly in the United States.
Okay.
But there's a big incidence of it in Australia, for example, as well. And there are lots of ET contact experiencers in Australia and New Zealand. So, and cases of CFIDs, but they have a different name for it over there. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it's called.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm very curious about it. I think most people don't understand what that kind of fatigue is like.
Mm-hmm.
Chronic fatigue, when people have it, you cannot replace your energy by sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
It's
true.
You cannot, people just say, well, rest more, get more sleep. You can't get back your energy when you have chronic fatigue. It's like,
that's true.
Access it.
And then you have fibromyalgia because your cells cannot heal themselves because you're not entering into the deepest levels of sleep. So the problem is compounded by that. They used to say, oh, go to the gym and work out and you'll feel better. That's not true with chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yes. Yeah. I have fibromyalgia. I've never been diagnosed with chronic fatigue, but I do believe that is a major part of, and you even say this in your research, that a lot of people don't get that diagnosis for chronic fatigue,
mm-hmm.
even though they report this excessive exhaustion that you cannot replace your energy. You can't get it back. You just can't. It's like it's separate from you almost.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just fascinated by that because I do have fibromyalgia, and I think a lot of empaths that I have met have fibromyalgia and fatigue. And so it's just, I'm curious to know more, in relation to our conscious awareness of other interdimensional beings, if that is something that they can help us with.
Yes. And
our consciousness is depleting us somehow.
Right. I have friends, colleagues in the field, and they tell me that there is a higher incidence of autoimmune disorders as well among both psychics and experiencers of ET contact. So there is an overlap there with people who are psychically gifted and those who are experiencers of ET contact.
Interesting. Do they have any advice or remedies that they suggest?
No, no one has given me the answer how to heal yourself, except for through, sound, for example,
Like
on YouTube. Yes, that was one thing, and binaural beats.
Oh, yes.
That kind of thing. There is healing at a cellular level. On YouTube, you can find a lot of different alternative methods using sound and vibration and that sort of thing. And so when the medical community either denies what you have or it does not know how to treat it, many people use alternative sources, and they do use those sources.
Yeah, I think that's important to know about. I also think it's important to be open to new drug therapies as well. I think in the spiritual community we're so anti big pharma, that actually I have gotten so much help from drug therapies through my doctor, and a big part of that was my own research, and the Fibro Manual is one of the things that I greatly encourage, and I have all of these books on my website for people to read, because in there she takes you through, and she's a medical doctor. She also has fibromyalgia. So she takes you through the steps of things that you can try with your doctor's assistance, very low doses of things that actually can help as well. So there's, a combination of things like, just simple things like getting massages and, moving your body in a very gentle way, like in a pool, a heated pool, or some of those things are non-drug oriented, but there's a tremendous amount of therapy that is being developed. But it's a conscious effort to research for yourself, because it's not really out there in training for most medical doctors.
And I imagine that tub soaks with scented oils would be helpful as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's just so many things I'd love to ask you, and I know you have another appointment, but thank you so much for being with me and for sharing your experiences and your research and your intellect. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure to be with you. It was a very interesting conversation, and perhaps we can do this again sometime.
Thanks for listening. That's all for this episode of Bright Pink Soul, a true intuitive podcast. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and keep following those intuitive nudges. You never know where they'll lead to next. If you've got a question, a story, or just something strange and wonderful to share, send it my way at brightpinkpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I might even feature it on the show, with your permission, of course. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend who could use a little intuitive spark today. Thank you.